recording has come. We are
Still
live.
live. Yeah.
Hey. So, welcome everybody. This is Mr. Viet with the Likehearted Project, Be Knowledge Innovations, and I'm here with my buddy uh Chris. I'll just say Chris, also known as C2M, from Boston. I am in San Diego, California. Chris is in Boston, and we are here today to give you some updates, just on lightheartedness and uh, some other things that we've been communicating about. We're going to talk about what the Likehearted Project is, and also tie in some talking points about the crypto community or sort of the crypto space. And I think there's something that is there's definitely opportunity for for this concept of decentralization. And I kind of was introduced to the term decentralization because of crypto. But when I think about the concept, even more so, it is also, something that I thought about. What about decentralized education? What about decentralized finance or DeFi, which is actually a thing? Um, so one of the things that I notice in our current time, this is Sunday, April what 13th, 2025, and we are definitely in an interesting time. We got, let's name out some current events. Tariffs, that's the big one. Uh, this is some unprecedented time in our political and governmental system. It's because we have someone like Elon Musk, right, who's an entrepreneur. He's actually a naturalized citizen, so he's not even U.S. born. And then obviously he's the richest man in the world because of Tesla. And now his role in government is starting to uh, has been shaking things up. Excuse me. Excuse me. And so I want to be able to address some of these things based on sort of what Chris and I have been conversing about throughout the years, ever since really the Clubhouse days in 2021, right during the pandemic. And so as we are now here in 2025, there's just been sort of a lot more insight, a lot more progress, and even a lot more confusion, to be honest, when it comes into sort of what does this globalized society or globalized world, right, economy look like, and how crypto has started to um, really, really, really help drive that conversation. So, the Likehearted Project was founded in Clubhouse in 2021, January 2021, as a concept. It was a test because I basically used the term lighthearted in a very casual, planned conversation when I was preparing for grad school back in 2017. And when I was meeting my then future classmates, the line was, I don't look for like-minded people, I look for like-hearted people, and it resonated with the people that were in the group. And so since then, um, the word like-hearted, I felt, is been something that is sort of my driving force. It is a way that I continue to operate, because of what I realize is that while the term itself has been untapped, I believe the concept is still has been has existed. And I wish to sort of bring the concept more to the forefront of people's minds, um, because we are in this time where I feel that diversity of thought and innovation is necessary in order for us to meet the needs of our current challenges and build a more sustainable future. So, in the spirit of kind of learning about decentralized finance and decentralization, I feel that the Likehearted project is sort of the um, what can I call it? Is sort of the language, maybe the culture behind decentralization, right? And so what that means is some, there's phrases like your tribe, your vibe, or your vibe, your tribe, rather. And it's this idea that you can find yourself in a group setting and feel completely yourself, right? No code switching, no no assimilation, no having to mask your hide parts of your identity. Uh, and so, what does this mean? Well, it challenges the norms, it challenges the definitions of quote unquote professionalism, right? So when we look at the professional world and the working world, excuse me, a lot of us are tied or sort of bounded by the corporate protocol or system or kind of like professional etiquette or way of being, or there may be even a dress code or a hair code even. And so as Chris and I have had these conversations with plenty of professionals in via Clubhouse, we're now taking to the video platforms, and I am using StreamYard. I'm um, recording and posting to the Like-Hearted Facebook page, and Chris is simultaneously broadcasting to his Facebook Live. I'm sorry, YouTube Live page. So with that, I just wanted to kind of give some background information and some introduction into what we're here to talk about for the next 20 minutes or so. We'll try to keep this as focused as possible, although we like to have talking points to cover, and this is unscripted. So with that, Chris and I tend to just kind of free flow, and I'm going to go ahead and turn over the mic to let him share any of his opening thoughts and comments before we dive deeper into this idea of decentralization and cryptocurrency. Chris.
Appreciate that, Viet. So C2M, Christopher from Boston. I'm an IT recruiter, and it's interesting because, all things kind of come back to Clubhouse. And, Like-Hearted Project started on Clubhouse. That's where Viet and I connected. We were actually on X Spaces today because we are both in a NFT community. And, there were people there that remembered Viet from Clubhouse, not necessarily the project, right? And then you're like, oh, we're also in this project. And I think that's the cool thing about the NFT space is that it's an interesting intersection of DeFi and community, right? Because it's not just about making money, but it's kind of like making money together, right? Like WAGMI, we're all going to make it, and the truth is we're not all going to make it, right? But it's the culture, right? And that's different than fiat, right? Like fiat is kind of like I got to win, so you got to lose. Crypto is like, hey, wait a second, maybe we can all win, but maybe I just win a little more. or maybe I win a little less, and the community is there to support me. So it's all a matter of perspective because the concept and the theory I think are revolutionary, but the application and the rugs and the scams and the just the hey man, I wish it worked out but didn't, and the timing is very interesting. So I know that will be part of the dialogue that we get into. But I think the part that will resonate the most for me. And one reason that I think, crypto becomes, a starting point to what we talk about with Lighthearted is that at the end of the day, in order to be lighthearted, it's a lot easier if your finances are in order, right? Like there are different pieces of the house that need to be taken care of, so you can kind of put your mind onto some of these bigger social concepts. So, with that, Viet, happy to see where you want to take the dialogue. Yeah, I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, your audio got rugged briefly, and it was a little garbled towards the
Uh,
end there.
okay, my
Um,
internet feels like it's lagging a little on the video, so just definitely if that's happening, just jump in and we'll switch course.
sure. But yeah, so yeah, I what's interesting is Adrian is somebody that I had worked with in the past via the Likehearted Project Club, and there was another man named Brian who did, what was it called? It was like the Be Good, right? But they basically rented out the Like-Hearted Project Club, and he facilitated some really good discussions and had some really good panelists and featured speakers. And so Adrian was a part of that team. I even went out to one of their retreats here in San Diego at the local resort here. It was really cool. I would like to follow up and kind of stay connected. It was definitely cool to see Adrian on the stage tonight with the Giraffe Towers. And I think I'm okay with mentioning some of these projects because it's when you enter into the crypto space, you can treat it like the stock market, right? But it's a lonely way, it's a lonely road. And because it's new technology, there are a lot of there's a learning curve involved. And so the difference between traditional finance and crypto finance, cryptocurrency, is that uh, the community aspect is so much necessary, so much more necessary, because it's not traditional stock market where you can kind of be in a silo. What you really have to understand before you really get into certain projects or coins or tokens or whatever you have it, you need to have trusted community members, and whatever that means to you, I'll leave it up to that. But to me, community members are essentially, you can join a community. So, say for example, Draft Tower is a community with Gary Henderson, who created it, and then there's Ball Token with the Rundown and his community, right? So I'm a part of both. As well as several other, and they're just projects that I found along the way that I believe in, and that I am honored to be a part of, to be honest, because they're the ones helping me learn what I know, right? I mean, I do my own research. I have to study on my own, and then whatever I do, I bring back to those around me as an educator, right? So this is, my background as an educator allows me to sort of pay it forward in a way that tends to resonate with people, just because I can translate. I'm also a poet, so it really helps for me to kind of be analogous and help people understand this new technology, right? And this new concept of DeFi, and uh, into familiar terms and concepts that you know that are more traditional. So with that, you know, let's talk about what's going on in the markets right now. You know, I guess I'll pass it back to you, Chris. What have you been noticing? It's we the
Mhm.
elections
Yeah.
happened, right? Like
Hmm.
we November 11th or November 5th, I believe.
Hmm.
Um, the crypto market woke up
Yeah.
like completely, like it just skyrocketed. And this was coming from a what 3-year bearish cycle. I would say
Yeah.
2024 really started picking up. It started in like February, March. It was just like, oh shit, something's happening. And then there were some ebbs and flows. It maintained, it didn't dip, but you know, and then it really took off when Donald Trump was reelected as president. And so there's this narrative, right, that Donald Trump is going to make the United States the crypto capital of the world. And there's excitement around that, right? Regardless of how you feel about the man, if you are into crypto, you're excited about these comments. I'm excited about these comments. And so what happened between um, I would say November 2024 and December, there was some ebbs and flows. But ever since the new year, and especially this past month, the market took a dip, a major one. Like, oh shit, are we hitting another bearish market? And so this narrative that he is going to make, um, the United States a crypto capital of the world. There's still news, about it. Elon Musk is also a supporter and a enthusiast, a cheerleader, if you will, for crypto, um, along with other people in the media. I mean, Ball Token is the face of Ball is Scottie Pippen, and he's come out as a crypto investor, Bitcoin and Ball, and he, just like a lot of everyone else and that kind of comes into this space, is learning as well. And with his status, he's been able to really understand the game and learn and speak with some of the top players, right, in the crypto world. So he's gone to these conferences, he's been on stage, he's been the keynote for several different crypto conferences. And this idea that, you know, celebrities getting into tokens was kind of a faux, was kind of taboo in the crypto world. It still is. But I think what is inevitable, it's like, why not? I mean, isn't this opportunity made for everybody, right? If we're going to really uh, look at, you know, the economy, we all have a role, we all have a position, we all have a place. So whether we're consumers or producers or somewhere in between, or brokers, we have to really start to understand the game, right? I firmly believe that the blockchain technology is here to stay. There's no doubt about it in my mind. Blockchain technology is the new. It's called Web 3 for a reason, and Web 2 was basically everything from e-commerce sites, social media, and cloud and apps, right? Cloud-based computing, phone apps. That's Web 2. Web 1 was your AOL, that stupid CD-ROM that they gave you every week, and um, you had email, and maybe some cheap website. Uh, but as we've seen technology now move into this digital marketplace, this digital economy, digital world, um, we are now, as people, right, especially the youth generation, who are now growing up as this is their new norm. This is the new norm, and they're in it. The young people, the ones that you hear stories of teenagers making a lot of money off of crypto, right? And it's unheard of because Well, we didn't, as I was growing up, I didn't have the luxury of being able to just play with money on the stock market. Okay. I had to wait till I actually had a job and I was an adult and responsible for my own finances. This was in the early 2000s. I started investing into stocks, things like Starbucks and Starbucks is the main one that I made some profit off of. And I was happy about it. It was exciting. I missed the ball with Amazon. I literally saw that thing, that that stock price. I witnessed the breaking point. And the rest is history with Amazon, right? So what we are kind of here to talk about now is just sort of like what is this new technology and how does it fit into this kind of greater um, vision for the Like-Hearted Project, which is to essentially create more sustainable, inclusive economies and communities and really group members, right? So what I believe is for the Like-Hearted Project is very similar to how the crypto ecosystem works. You have your projects, you have your main, your main grayscale coins, right? Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, right? Maybe throw in XRP, Cardano, things like that. So you kind of have your solid ecosystems, and then you have your altcoins, and then you have your meme coins, and then what we're now kind of looking at is real world assets. So I'm throwing out this terminology just for new people who are unfamiliar to kind of start doing some research on these keywords. And what I see with how this crypto world is that they're like, think of it as globalized clubs. Okay, when you think about your high school club where you came together as students and you're in the ecosystem of the school, and then you create a niche club. So it could be the gaming club, it could be Metcha, it could be BSU, it could be you know Asian Pacific Islander Student Alliance or whatever. um and you have these clubs, and then what happens is it's in a sense you network with the other local chapters of others, maybe other schools, other cities, other regions, maybe even other states. So that's kind of what's going on with these crypto projects. So we mentioned Draft Tower, we mentioned Ball Token, even Freaky Kiki out though in there just now, um, to basically illustrate that you have this concept and you have a token that has value, has stored value. I'm not going to call it a currency because that's SEC stuff that is still kind of being hashed out. Um, but in a sense, you got groups of people, maybe even thousands or millions of people who essentially buy in to these projects. What I look at is how I look at these projects, quote unquote, are startups. Right? I look at them as startups. And then with any startup, you got to raise capital. So the beautiful thing about cryptocurrency and blockchain is that it's essentially it's an all-in-one package. So you may have a business concept or a business model or some sort of a brand or a product or service, and you want to tokenize it. What does that mean? Or you need to raise capital. So what you can do is you can tokenize it. And tokenizing is essentially a way of raising capital where people can buy into your token, and it is backed by probably whatever the market, the ecosystem that it's launched on. So, for example, if you launch a token on Ethereum, then it is basically backed by Ethereum, meaning that you put liquidity in to give it some value. So when people buy their token and the value of your token goes up, then basically, the value its value in Ethereum also goes up. So, but Ethereum is one of those, is a blockchain. Okay, it is a portal, or it is a network for you to conduct business on, right? To build on. Then there's Solana, which is another ecosystem. It's another type. It's another blockchain, and it has its own network and its own sort of like way of operating. But they can, essentially function in the same manner. So that's what's happening in the crypto space. Okay, the blockchain space is that you got all these different projects and teams of people, developers, marketers, um, troubleshooting, whatever, analysts, advisors, whatever, and they're all startups. So Solana is a startup, Ethereum is a startup, Bitcoin, I wouldn't say it's a startup, but um, it's still fairly new, right? Only what, 12 years old or so? 14? I don't know what the numbers are. I'm kind of winging it right now. So if you want to fact check me, go ahead, drop a line, drop a comment, and provide those details. But I'm kind of just speaking from general sense. And then so every project is going to need a solid team for one, and a solid community if it is to be worth any kind of value. So let's put this in sort of tangible layman's terms. I look at cryptocurrency as sort of this idea of amusement parks, or amusement brands that we know of. So I grew up going to Chuck E. Cheese, and it was the most exciting, one of some of the most exciting times of my life, right? Like, you go and you basically get your tokens with your parents' money, and then you use those tokens to play games, and then you play those games to get tickets, and then you redeem those tickets to get prizes. Okay, great. I was kind of a holder. I was always collecting tickets because I always dreamt of getting the big prize on the wall rather than in the display case. And so, but Chuck E. Cheese was not the only model to do that. We have Boomers, or Family Fun Center, and here in San Diego there was Family Fun Center turned into Boomers. Then you had Wonderland, which is a digital arcade, was a nickel arcade. And then you have the adult version as I started going to college in early 2000s, Dave and Buster's. Oh my gosh, it's an adult arcade, and they serve drinks and food, and it's just art. It's just an adult version of Family Fun Center, or of Chuck E. Cheese. And so that concept is still here. Like, it's tokenized, right? So now you don't have tickets, you have points on a card, right? You have credit on a game card. And then you can even get rewarded just by having the card and buying food, right? From the restaurant. So this idea, and then, to make it even more tangible to a lot of us, think about your rewards points on your credit cards. Like, when you do your research to select a credit card, you're researching the perks, the benefits. Okay, what can I get? Some, maybe people who are travelers, they get a card with frequent flyer miles. Maybe, if you like cash back, I've been a cashback, person. So everything that I got was how do I get more cash back? And so, you're accumulating points, and every time you utilize the ecosystem, or in other words, use your card, you get rewarded. You can spend it on Amazon. You can use your Amazon Prime card and use your points towards you know you can pay off some of your bill. You can use it to as to pay for some of the products that you see on Amazon. My point is, these concepts of tokenization and point systems, or tickets, right? Like, all these things are essentially what the blockchain and cryptocurrency is about. So, you know, while a lot of us want to stay loyal, like for example, if I only wanted Chuck E. Cheese tickets because I only wanted Chuck E. Cheese prizes, then that's probably all I'm gonna go to, right? Or if you are a Dave and Buster's enthusiast and you have your cash card, well, chances are you're not gonna go to another site because you loaded up your Dave and Buster's card, right? You can't use your Dave and Buster's card at a Chuck E. Cheese. You just can't, right? So this is the concept of investing into projects that you believe in. It's just like stocks. If you're gonna buy a stock, man, you might as well buy their products and services. So if I bought Amazon stock, I was a fan of that. I was a fan of Starbucks at the time. But whatever. If you got Walmart, you probably want to shop at Walmart. If you got Amazon stock, maybe you want to spend money on Amazon. The idea is that you want the ecosystem, the community to thrive. So with that, let's talk about, let's hear it from Chris. How do you see this word community,
Yeah.
right? And cryptocurrency?
Well, you did give a lot of background. Let me start. Not to rehash everything you said, but when you talked about Trump kind of ushering in this era, like I'll remind you that on the campaign trail you could see that happening, right? He spoke at Bitcoin conferences, and there was a lot of energy going into it. And again, not a political statement, but he waited until he was about to take office to launch a coin, right? And from that perspective, it's genius, right? Because the eyes of the world are on him. Now, Trump coin, you know, however you want to look at it, is still, on the network. And
Chris,
from is it rugging? Or how's the audio coming through? Can you hear me at all or no?
it was rugging for a minute, but I had
Okay,
to
okay.
close. Like I had a caption generator running, and I
Okay.
closed that. So
All
whatever
right.
processes I can get rid of on my end, I'm trying to do that as you go.
Sounds good. Can I keep going, or is it still a little digital?
I think I found it. I think I found it. I had
All
something
right.
downloading or uploading in the background.
Yeah, because when you were talking, at least on my end, everything was coming through clear. Um, but yeah, so I think from the purposes of, where I'll be adding insight into crypto, I think I've chosen two main vehicles, right? So Bitcoin as a store of wealth, right? And Bitcoin, again, when you look at the presidency and the start of January, which seems like much longer than it is, you had Bitcoin hit an all-time high, right? Like you hit the milestone, right? You hit the 6-digit Bitcoin price that you didn't think you were going to hit. Now what happens is everybody buys in at a different value, right? So while it was amazing to see that, it was short lived because now people are going to take profits, right? Right or wrong. You might think Bitcoin's going to 1 million, but if you bought Bitcoin at $50 and it's, over 100 grand, you sell. You sell some, right? Unless you're Michael Saylor. I think he's got a different, approach. But also a different approach in how he acquires it. Um, but the main chain I'll probably be talking about is Solana because, as you've mentioned, Viet, the Draft Tower is on the Solana blockchain, and from the perspective of a use case, it's a very reliable chain, but it's really about the transaction costs because you know I haven't transacted on ETH in a while, but I still remember just how painful those costs could be, right? And I think to kind of dovetail off of your analogy, when you start thinking about there's always going to be other chains, but it's really about the energy, and that's I think where the community component comes in because no coin pumps without it's not it's not like a single whale that is 100% um, responsible, for a coin pumping. You need a lot of energy, and I think what makes crypto very interesting is that energy moves so fast, right? So you're going to see the intersection, probably a better word, the intersection of technologies like AI with blockchain, because while the blockchain's a ledger, will tell you what happened, it doesn't stop you from getting rugged. The only thing that stops you from getting rugged, conceivably, is to be able to move funds, quicker than everyone else, right? Because there's a point where people buy and there's a point where people sell, and you just want to be on the right side of both of those, right? You don't want to buy at the top, you don't want to sell at the bottom, and I think you're going to need to leverage tech in order to do that, because I've never scalp traded, but you probably have more insight if you want to share that. I mean, you can be staring at the screen, you still miss it, right? Because you just can't react that quick, because you don't, you're seeing, what I mean, what's happening. You're pressing the button, and it's the latency, right? It's like, hey, Chris, you're rugging, right? And it's like, okay, well, if I rug on a space, I say that shit again, right? Like, if you miss the dump, it could be gone, right? Like, it's I think that's the hardest thing to understand about the space, is that, literally every day, literally like a meme coin means, something happened, you take that stupid saying, spin up a token, put money into it, and then like 48 hours later, like, it might be gone, right? Like, there's very few coins that kind of outlast a week, let alone the communities, right? Like, I think people that invest in those tokens aren't necessarily a community, right? I think they
Right.
represent liquidity, right? And I think the challenge is, you don't want to be someone's exit liquidity. However, you know, it's really hard to time, and that's why I think, for to use your term, the projects, right? Because I think a lot of um, I think it's hard to call a lot of NFT projects startups, because I think there may be intent, like everyone's like, we're gonna have merch, we're gonna launch this game, like, there's things and there's intent, right? But again, if the community bails on you, if the founder bails on you, there's a lot of shit that can go sideways, right? So you can't, you don't, I mean, that's the piece that's organic, right? Like, you don't build community in a day, right? And you can speak to this in Ball and Kiki. I can speak to it in the Giraffe Tower as you can, but maybe a little more actively. Giraffe Tower has been around for 4 years. So in NFT terms, that's a long fucking time. Like, that is,
Yeah.
you just don't see that, right? And that starts to put you in a different category, and then you've got to look at, like I said, there's just the data is just mind numbing, right? Just how many communities uh, get created, and then it's like, are those communities still there? I mean, literally, I think at some point, whether it's with you or some other members of the community, I literally want to do something called, let's take a page out of what is it, Capital One, like, what's in your wallet. Like, people need to
Yeah.
do some wallet hygiene, man. Like, I probably have, and I'm not a big trader, but I probably have like 40 NFT projects in there, and some of them just may have been airdropped, and some of them may have been prizes that you win. But sometimes you forget that those communities are there, right? Because they don't they aren't able to keep their visibility, right? Or for whatever reason, they need a rebrand, right? And I think that's been what has kept me an active member of Gary Club. And it gets confusing, right? Because there's a lot of names and a lot of pivots, but at the end of the day, I think we're visible in on crypto Twitter's Giraffe, right? So usually we refer to ourselves as Giraffe. And the reason I mention that is, again, it goes back to community, right? It goes back to how important is it to you to represent this community, right? And it's not just for the sake of saying I'm part of the community. I think successful communities find a way to keep members engaged, and that always has some level of monetization to it, right? And then I think as we start to, then mushroom, you expand the view, right? When we start talking about Like-Hearted, again, you want to have a community, but community based around a concept, can only go so far. You then have to take it to, well, how does the community function? How do they make money? Why do they come together? Right? All these different pieces. And I think when you can mix mission and crypto, I think that's powerful. So I'll land there. And I'm looking at the time, 1:33. I probably got about another, let's call it about another 30 minutes. But if I fall asleep, just yell.
Sure. Yeah. So I realized I had your photo or your window as the main one, even when I was talking. So I'm kind of playing around with these layouts. Uh, I so I wanna. You mentioned, NFTs, and that Giraffe Tower is an NFT project, right? And that there are, uh, you said also something that was pretty kind of powerful, or it was a big statement to say that the Giraffe Tower NFTs have been around for 4 years, and that's a long time in the crypto space or in the NFT kind of space. Well, there's a
Oh, and
reason.
and just to
um,
fact check you on your Bitcoin, it was 2009. So I think you were
2009.
close,
Okay,
right? So what's that, 16 years? I can't do
16.
midnight
Yeah,
math, but right? So, but yeah, a Giraffe Tower, I want to say, yeah, 2021. And I think it recently
2021.
just turned 4. I think Gary had mentioned something about that. So I think, it's within last quarter that, that officially became 4.
Yeah. So for transparency, that's when I got involved, January 2021, in the crypto. That's like the first time I ever opened up a wallet, or creating a wallet and put some money in. And then that year was, I'm gonna go ahead and say it. Clubhouse was a catalyst for the crypto world, because of it was sort of the space to go to, Clubhouse, if you wanted real time conversation about cryptocurrency. And you were hearing from all levels. You had your somewhat experts, right? No one's an expert because it's still new. But you had people who knew what they were doing, right? Maybe Bitcoin class of 2010 or some shit like that. And they've been in the game, so they knew kind of like what they were talking about. And then there were some people who were just full of shit, and they were just like me, trying to make some money. And I was there to learn, and I was there to also help provide some sort of a educational experience. So I kind of I started, the person that I frequented his rooms, David Goldstein, and he's actually a big media guy on X Spaces now. So he's got a major platform, crypto platform, Goshen Media, great partnerships, and he's basically built a crypto empire. And over the year, so I was frequenting his rooms in Clubhouse and learning from those just listening in, asking questions. He gave me, I shot him some DMs. He basically would give me some direction, you know, how to get XRP when XRP was still like illegal. And you couldn't buy it in the US. XRP was a US cryptocurrency, and it was undergoing a lawsuit by the SEC and the Securities and Exchange Commission, right? Big uh kind of $1 billion sort of like a lawsuit, or whatever the correct term is, and it spanned for several years until last year. They basically determined that, well, let's just say XRP won, and let's just say that the bit that I was holding, I actually turned. I sold too early. Like it was too good to be true. I sold at a regional high, okay, and then it pretty seemingly like tripled from there, or quadrupled from there, and so now we're nowhere near 71 cents or 40 cents or 18 cents at one point, right? We're at uh, the $2 mark and more. Okay. So as you can see, like this sort of like timing of things, and is there an XRP community? I'm not sure, because it's kind of a corporation, to be honest. And XRP, for those who aren't familiar, is essentially a finance utility token, and it's designed to do large financial transactions. So it is to be utilized by banks in order to process transfers much more efficiently. Why is that exciting? Why is that meaningful? Well, because you look at the traditional financial market and the financial banking systems, they're super slow. So whenever something says, "Oh, your money will be available in 5 to 7 business days," well, this is where crypto obliterates that. It's within seconds or minutes, even, right? Like, even though, like, I get frustrated because I'm waiting 5 minutes for a transfer to clear, or that seems like a long time. When the reality is we're still waiting 5 to 7 business days for $500 to move from one account to another. With crypto, you can instantly transfer assets. So XRP serves as a protocol uh, for that headache. Okay, that current headache. That's the technology innovation for the banking industry, and because it's on the blockchain, it is a cryptocurrency. And so when people say like crypto's a scam and all that, well, stuff with technology is technology. Are you going to say cell phones are a scam? No, cell phones are not a scam. They're technology. Can you use it to scam people? Oh, hell yes. Like, with new technology, there's going to be new exploits. And with that, this is why Chris and I continue to talk and continue to have conversations and broadcasts under the Likehearted Project, is to say, we believe in a an exciting future that's just and equitable and sustainable. Okay. So I'm hoping to help bridge this gap between, the haves and the have-nots, the knows and the ones with knowledge and the ones who are ignorant to it. um what else? Skills gaps. We talked about skills gaps. Chris comes from the workforce development space. I come from the educational space, K through 12, and even I should say traditional educational space. And Chris comes from the workforce place. So together we kind of see what's going on with uh the world and how it operates. And we tend to want to look at it from the economic standpoint and the financial standpoint, because that's kind of where that's everyone's bottom line. I will start to kind of conclude with sort of more comments on how this all ties into the Like project in terms of crypto and economy. Now, the Likehearted Project is still not incorporated, although it is trademarked. So if you're trying to steal my shit, fuck you. It's taken. I nailed it down. And if you want to use it, talk to me. I think we can do some amazing things. Um, I do want to get the brand and the name, or even just a concept. I don't have to be the face of it. I don't care to be famous under it. I really just want people to start feeling, right, rather than thinking, more at ease, feeling more included in their lives, and not having such a, when we talk about personal finance or family wealth, that shit's foreign to people, right? We got people who are happy working their 9 to 5 and collecting their W-2s, and yet I am a firm believer that that is sort of what capitalism wants. It's what these one percenters want. And with crypto and decentralized finance, you have to have a different mindset in terms of being able to own your own assets. Uh, for example, this cell phone, right? It is powered by uh, Helium Mobile, and I'm kind of going into a rabbit hole, but I don't want to do that. I don't know. I got to come up with another way to do a screen share. So essentially, this is a decentralized phone service. Okay. And roughly $20 a month on my end. They now have a free plan. So if you're interested in that, I have a referral. You can definitely take advantage. You get some credits, but you basically pay roughly $20 a month, and you can pay it in USDC, which is basically a dollar, US dollar, or you can pay in helium or mobile token, whatever crypto tokens are, that it accepts. I don't want to pigeonhole in, I don't want to rabbit hole into that. My point being is that my second phone line is a crypto line. It is a decentralized uh, telecommunications line. And what that means is, I have a hotspot, and so I also broadcast, and it's basically owning my own cell phone, a cell phone tower, and it provides services, uh, what do they call it? Um, Signal, right? To various cell phone users in the area. And then I, generate tokens off of it, which I then use to pay for the service itself. So my point being is that how this crypto and blockchain uh, kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Market and I want to say the blockchain sector, okay, because it is going to essentially change every other sector in the world, like that it currently exists. So when you're talking about healthcare, when you're talking about science, all of these things are starting to to explore the capabilities of blockchain technology. So some of this crypto are utility, right? Utility tokens that aren't meant for finance. They're not DeFi tokens. They're not focused on financial value. They're focused on utility and being able to streamline processes. Another thing I use on this phone and my other phone, that I'm a part of, is I use this thing called the Coin app. Okay, so yeah. Okay. So example, this is one of those things where you can generate coin is by listening to ads. Okay, but it's essentially a geo mapping platform, and basically it's like, think of a Google camera, right? That's mapping out Google Maps. So you might have seen a car with a camera, crazy 360 camera on the hood or on the roof, and it's basically mapping out. It's what you see on Google Maps when you zoom in, and you can go at street level and see what the street actually looks like, right? So this coin app is essentially XYO, made by the company XYO, which is also the token, and it is essential geo mapping. Okay. I used to drive for Uber, so at the time it was just that, very profitable, or basically I was earning a lot of tokens. And then I last year I cashed in these coins from the app into XYO, and then XYO skyrocketed like 500%, which the little bit of coins that I had, it's not like I'm a millionaire or anything. I'm definitely not rich off of it, but it was a nice kind of example of what utility tokens can do. But the purpose is to map. It's mapping the world on the blockchain. It's different from Google Maps, and that's still Web 2 stuff, and it's being stored in Web 2 technology. Um, and then there's a more recent one that I plug in this reader, the ODB2 scanner, into the port in my car, and it uses the vehicle data. And then you can profit off. You can basically sell your vehicle data as you are driving around once a week. So again, these are new technology. I like to consider myself an early adopter, and when I get excited, when I learn about new technology, I get excited and want to test things out, see how it works, and then maybe even be ahead of the game when it comes to when the technology actually becomes more usable for everyday people. So with that, the Likehearted project is really the Likehearted project is not a crypto advocacy, you know, platform. The Likehearted project is more of a business consulting. How do you innovate? How does an organization innovate and become sustainable with peace building methodology? So it's problem solving through peace building methodologies, and the problem solving could be anything from team dynamics like toxic workplaces to pivoting when the price of commodities start to increase because of inflation. How do you become more sustainable? How do we become more efficient? Those types of things. And that's what the Like-Hearted Project is about, is creating more inclusive environments, more efficient teams, and processes for different groups, organizations, and even people. You might find yourself in a personal development stage, and the Like-Hearted Project can actually provide some methodology, some tools, some workshops to help ground yourself, and also learn about yourself. What kind of conflict style do you have? Um, what is your ideation to business model look like? These are things that the Like-Hearted Project can help you process. And then, of course, with you, Chris and I will continue to have and hold spaces like this, where we invite other members of the community to kind of share their insights of their respective fields, their talents, their skill sets, their expertise. We've had people in the cyberspace industry. We've had people in the restaurant industries, and what else? I mean, even women in tech, right? Women bosses, uh, women of color. Um, we hold spaces that are non-traditional, and for the purpose of being, let's make them traditional, right? So rather than like-mindedness, which is traditional ways of thinking or being, because it's essentially assimilation, or yeah, that's kind of the most appropriate word. It's just assimilation into the status quo. The Like-Hearted Project is essentially uh, disregards that ideology and says that diversity is actually the key. Diversity of thought, that of honoring people's backgrounds and experiences, and coming together with a common value system or common purpose, is probably the most um, powerful type of entity that can exist. And so it doesn't really follow a corporate model. We say come as you are. Like, there's no dress code, right? Like there's no language protocol. Like, you know Um, and definitely no code switching because I don't feel like I have to censor myself in order to appeal to people's biases. So with that said, expect more from us.
Mhm.
We definitely want to highlight your story as it pertains to your experiences and identity, how you may have found yourself having to rediscover who you are or even reintroduce who you are because of the way our current society is. um there's this idea of non-censorship, but I don't want to say they, that's kind of rude. um this idea of censorship, but only if it resonates with them, I guess. I don't know, but we're here to talk about it. And we have this recording heavily on crypto because I feel, or at least Chris and I have noticed, like there's been a lot more activity and conversation in the space because of where the market's at. And that's not by accident, right? It's tied into what has happened politically and socially and you know economically even. So with that,
Mhm.
um any
Yeah,
I'll
I
turn it
do
over to
want.
you, Chris, to respond.
Thank you, thank you. I will jump in and yeah, I'm sorry. I think some of that I had my mute off, and yeah, I do get a little tired around this time. But I think one of the tie-ins that you had mentioned, and just kind of a callback to some of the things we were doing. One of the tenets of the Likehearted project was, hey, how do we make this impact? And again, you mentioned I'm in staffing and you're an educator, and we had our talent ecosystem, right? And it's really just about looking at the total solutions of things. So if you're a job seeker, what do you need as a job seeker to be successful? Well, you need an employer to hire you. For an employer to hire you, they need to know that you've got the right skills. So you're like, oh, yeah, I'll go to college, and you graduate, and it's like, look, I'm a college graduate, right? And that's challenging in a couple ways, right? Because one, you're a college graduate, but not everyone's a college graduate. But now you're a college graduate, but you may not have the specific skills that they need. And not everybody goes through the standard, hey, I went to high school, now I'm going to go to college for 3 years, 5 years, whatever that number is. I mean, most adult learners are, and this is outside of the concept of lifetime learning, right? It may take you 7 years to get an associate's. It may take you 12 years to get a master's, right? Like, and at the end of the day, it's like, okay, well, what's that cost, right? And now you're just in a lot of debt, but no real, the institution that gave you that degree doesn't necessarily give you a pathway to a job, right? So the concept of the talent ecosystem was educators and trainers should know, here's what employers will actually pay for, and then you market that to the job seekers, right? Because at the end of the day, and this is the tie into crypto, right? People know about coins because that's where the energy is, right? You see the money coming in that creates the pump, right? Like in higher education, it's not necessarily that easy, right? Because it's a longer play, but it doesn't really need to be, right? So it'll be exciting again to talk about those concepts. But to your point, um, you know, it's a horrible job market right now, right? Like it is hard to find, the silver lining in the job market. But you can talk about the opportunities in crypto because that's where the energy is. That's where the news is. That's where you know the, the education is, right? Because I think for people to actually understand crypto, they have to get away from the fear of crypto, right? Like you had mentioned, how long it takes, with traditional banking, right? And this is like online transactions. Like, you go to do something outside of like a credit card purchase, and the only reason the credit card purchase is going through is because someone else is holding the bag. and they're like, oh, you'll pay me interest, right? Like, they found a way to monetize that. But when it comes to um, these transactions, not only are they timely, but they're very costly. And I think when we start talking about the opportunities for blockchain, from a DeFi perspective, you're talking about lower cost, especially when you're talking about microtransactions. So now you can take very small amounts of money that um, in traditional settings would be not cost effective to send. And now not only can you send them efficiently, but you can send them quickly and you can send them at relatively no cost, right? And there's so many other applications that the blockchain is going to hold for those that are unhoused, unbanked, that have different technology divides. You're not talking about needing a smartphone, to be on the blockchain, right? So very excited to reignite those conversations. Very excited to reignite the relationships, with different industries, right? Like you had mentioned, the restaurant industry and all these other groups that we used to partner with, and it'll feel a little different. But like I said, I think crypto is that common ground, right? Because, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, sooner or later, you're going to need to be connected to crypto. And I think we want to embrace that messaging as we build community, right? That, hey, don't sell your house and put it all in a Bitcoin, right? That is, none of this is financial advice, like, because like we don't know, right? We're just learning. But I think what you need to do is, you need to share the experience, right? Like, someone's like, I want to make money in Bitcoin. It's like, you have a wallet? What's that? Let's start there. Let's start having that conversation and build that confidence, because even though crypto, blockchain, whatever terminology I'm going to use at 2 a.m. here, is effective, and there's it's still scary, right? Especially if you're bridging between blockchain, like because there's no customer support. You'll wait 5 to 7 business days because you can call your bank and be like, bitch, where's my money? Right? Like at some point, there's somebody to call, right? And, you can go into a branch and yell at some unsuspecting teller and just be like, you know what I mean? But, you have a sense that someone will find your money. In crypto, they find your money and they're like, you shouldn't have done that shit. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, well, it was a fake website. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, doesn't matter. This is where you sent it, right? It's a ledger. It tells you what happened. It doesn't give you recourse if what happened wasn't what you intended. And I think the only way to combat that is through community, right? So you win together, you grieve together, but more so it's through education, right? Like everybody's been rugged. You know what I mean? Like every time I got rugged, I would call you and I'd be like, oh, you know what I mean? I think I
Right.
just bought this. They told me I got to wait like 12 weeks. And you're like, no, 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 no. And, again, like when you're doing this at like 3 a.m, you're like, I think I just did something good. Right. And it's like, and that's why I hate ETH, man. I was like, man, these gas fees, because not only did I get rugged, but like I paid to get rugged. Right. Like that's crypto. Right. So,
Yeah.
but and how do you explain that? There's like what, 6 generations now? How do you explain to a centenarian, you know, that they just lost their money, right? You know what I mean? Like they may not care at this point, you know what I mean? But it is hard to explain, right? And it's hard. You got to meet people at where they're at, but there's a lot of different places where people are at, right? So I think um, what you can do is educate yourself and you share your experience. Because again, it's not financial advice, right? No one here, it's like everything else. For all intents and purposes, nobody here holds anything, right? You know what I mean? We It's not about a flex, and it's not about deception. It's not about scams. It's about understanding how to navigate this space, because it's coming one way or another, right? Crypto's coming, AI's coming, the bots are coming, like all this stuff is going to happen. It's just a question of, how well do you want to position yourself uh, to address that. And I think when you can do that in a like-hearted manner, people will at least understand the intent and will at least feel comfortable in the space because, we're not shilling, right? Um, we're sharing information that we believe needs to be on your radar, right? What you do with that information is up to you, right? But I think creating that space is what's important, and that's what came out of social audio, right? The power of voice. And when you were talking about the clubhouse days, and some very reputable rooms, you remember like BitClout, there things just get spun up, and sometimes you just need to, someone's like, hey, I can buy share, and I know there was actually digital real estate and this and that, but sometimes you just need to, you know you need to understand hype is hype, and you need to understand that people can disappear very quickly. And a Discord server is not a community. It's a platform, and people will shut down that platform, right? So yeah, so I'll land there because I think I'm starting to get a little incoherent, so I'll let you close us out however you want to close us out.
Yeah. I look, as an early adopter, I go into these things, and what I've learned is that um you're taking a risk, being an early adopter. If you're putting any kind of value into it, or financial value into it. So, you know, but I'm gonna conclude with this story. There, I don't know which platform would. I'm just gonna say Kickstarter. Similar to Indiegogo, GoFundMe. Well, GoFundMe is a little different, but Kickstarter, Indiegogo. These are essentially startup. You got a service, you got a product. You're looking to raise money, and therefore you're going to offer these early adopter prices for the perk, or for your perks, and then you basically get the product at a reduced rate. So before, home automation was basically easy, right? User friendly, easy. Like now, I bought, I had put in a bunch of smart LED bulbs, and I like it. I love it. Like you can see some ambient lighting in my house. And before all that, there's a Kickstarter campaign for, I don't even remember what the the brand was called, but they were essentially these Bluetooth speaker bulbs, and it was decent quality speaker bulbs, but it was basically, you can see the kind of recessed lighting that I have in my kitchen, and my they were actually put in my dining room. And so I invested in them. They had this ambient lighting thing, where, well, you can adjust like the temperature and the brightness. Like it was, again, before now, which is super easy to do. But it was a pretty cutting edge piece of technology. Well, they had an app that was tied to the actual hardware of the bulbs, and that was how to operate it. Well, the company, I ended up spending, I don't even know how much I bought them for. It was just years ago. And, being maybe an early adopter, I was like, this is dope. Like, even, I'm going to have these Bluetooth bulbs, and they're speaker bulbs. So I can now have music. I don't have to buy speakers. I don't have to, invest in a stereo equipment, or if you will. Um, and all of a sudden, the app stopped working. Like the bulb stopped working, and the app just was like blank or whatever. It just did not communicate with the bulbs. Now, supposedly, they were supposed to resume its connection. You should be able to utilize it, and that was supposedly. But basically, the the short of it all is that the company went under, and the team dissolved, and nobody wanted to do anything to support anyone. Like there was some sort of a falling out, whether it was just, lack of whatever, leadership, or bad financial planning, whatever. But basically, it was on Kickstarter, and there was no tech support whatsoever, and just it's like good luck finding anyone that had any sort of. I mean, I tried to figure out how to hack into the Bluetooth so I can control it with another sort of app or whatever. To no luck. And the point in me sharing this with you is that that's the nature of new technology. People are going to test and fail and test and fail, test and fail, test and fail until something catches on. So I tie it back to the AOL days, right? Like early internet days where AOL was the brand. It was the company that provided internet and a whole ecosystem that the internet can is capable of doing. So not only was it you got mail, right? You could do you could do shopping. They offered, portals with different. It was like your virtual mall, really. And then you had your other services. But here's the thing: they became the household name because they had the capital to be in your mailbox every week. So as I'm growing up as a teenager and we are all excited about this platform being able to go to AOL chat rooms and just act a fool in the chats. Um, we had instant messenger where we could actually communicate with our friends and be at home when your parents won't let you out. Like that to us, that was life, right? And so a lot of it was, this misnomer of AOL being the internet. Well, late years later, to my later high school days and earlier college days, we had things like Netgear or Net Zero, right? Which was like you can get free internet, right? And you just have to have this banner on your screen. And it wasn't AOL, right? It wasn't, it was like you can get on the internet, but you didn't have the whole AOL user interface or portal, right? So this is idea right now with crypto is that, you know, Solana, Ethereum, Bitcoin, ADA, what do you call it? Cardano, um, even Polygon. These are some of the main chains. These are some of the main platforms. Ethereum is probably the biggest one, right, in terms of usability and market. And then now with Solana kind of taking that third place, who knows which of these ecosystem, maybe both of them continue to thrive and they just have different. It's like, are you a Disney person or are you a Universal Studios type of person, right? Like, which theme park are you going to play in the most? And that's how you want to look at this. And then later on, you might decide, fuck Disney, they're too big for my, they're just too big, and they got their issues, social issues, and things about, they got its skeletons, and you kind of wake up to this sort of like F Disney, and I don't like what they, blah 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 blah. I'm gonna go to, not scared Knott's Berry Farm instead. It's the little smaller one, and blah blah blah. They represent my values more. Well, that's what this crypto ecosystem blockchain is about. And pretty soon you aren't looking, right? You're not going to be like, I gotta rent all my movies on Blockbuster, or buy all my music on Sam Goody and Columbia House. I can actually buy directly from the artist, right? I am going to buy Wu-Tang music from their crypto. Like they they launched uh some of their later albums on the blockchain. And now, instead of, you know any major industry record label holding, the rights to their music, they directly are, they're providing the music to you directly via crypto. And so this idea of community is as small and as big as you want it to be. So I know I know my personal friends who are poets who have their own following, millions of people, right? They built a name for themselves, and they don't have to be on any major record. They don't have to be. They don't have to go to any major book publishing. They can go. You can go local as they want. They can go small potatoes as they, small brand as they want, and then still collect the direct profits. So this is the idea. This is what we have to look forward to when it comes to the blockchain space, decentralization, the concept of decentralization and DeFi. And what I'm going to move forward with is sort of de-education, de-ed, where this idea of learning doesn't have to come from traditional systems, traditional models. Our traditional education system is still part of the greater system. And so when we, as kind of everyday people who are getting caught in sort of become the victims of corruption and unchecked capitalism and all this different sort of the war on poverty and um, not only just racial division but like class warfare, that to me is the ultimate game. It's like the billionaires becoming billionaire more, wealthy, while those who are just living life are suffering more and more because there's a disconnect, right? We may want to think we want to be like-minded like them, like we want to be like Elon Musk and become super billionaires, and we want to align ourselves with people like Elon Musk, but that's his heart is not where everyday people's hearts are, right? Like his goal is to go, you know, to Mars. That's his big mission. And how does someone like me or even Chris even identify with something like that? Like I just don't, I can't, that's
I'm
not
going to
something
Mars,
that,
bro. I'm going.
yeah, okay, well, good luck and let me know how to take pictures. Okay. Post it to
The human
Facebook or it never
race is
happened.
depending on me.
Right.
And just so you know,
So,
yeah, Elon's heart is, you're right, it's not where most people's hearts are. Probably somewhere between his like kneecap and his ass. That's what I think he's had it physically moved.
oh my
Better for
gosh.
blood flow.
I, you know, I can respect and appreciate who he is and what he's done. What I don't respect is the little nuances that let me know that he's a dickhead, that he's a bigot, um, completely out of touch with real people issues. And that's where I draw my line. So, with the Likehearted Project and with all this talk about new technology, I think the goal here and the conclusion here is to say, how do we become more in tune, more aligned with the opportunities that exist and the value systems that we want to move forward in our pathways. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and conclude. Anything you want to close out with, Chris?
Well, I think we'll figure out some kind of cadence here, right? Because I think it's, this is part of the whole tech we're trying to figure out, right? What's the stack? How do we, what's the word that I'm looking for? Syndicate, right? Get, to as many platforms as we can, as easily as we can. So I think we've got a few things to figure out, but it really just comes down to holding space. And I think every time we hold space, it feels great. And then it's just a question of how do we keep that momentum, right? Because, like life happens and it's tough and it's challenging. And I think that's the thing about being like-hearted, right? That it's, consistency is important in doing things, there's a right way to do a lot of things, but not the only way, right? So I'm looking forward to, what happens next. So yeah, appreciate you holding space with me, and let's see what happens next, and we'll come out with some type of communication plan, and hopefully we'll get a person to listen, and then maybe that person will get another person to listen. So we will see.
And
You know,
if you are that person, if you are that person that has made it through
either
this whole entire segment, make sure you follow the Likehearted Project down there. There's a ticker. We are on Instagram, likehearted.project, and on X, Likehearted Pro. Reason why it's a Likehearted Pro because the domain name is likehearted.pro, which is still not up because resources are a thing. And without them, we can't make these things happen. So if you have been listening and you have skill sets and talents and resources and you want to contribute and be a part of the Like-Hearted movement, definitely, I don't want to call it a movement, that sounds a little too much, but if this resonates with you and you want to help move things along and you have skills and talents, please shoot us a message. Again, either of those platforms are available. I go by Mr. Biet. I'm also on X and Instagram. Uh, Shoot, just wherever you saw this, just send a comment. Right. We may even repost this. I was thinking because I was, interacting with LinkedIn earlier today. I'll probably post it to LinkedIn, generate some visibility there, and we have our page on LinkedIn as well. So whatever platforms there are, we're gonna continue to test them. And basically, if you found this, then we did something right. And we look forward to having more conversations with you. So this is Vietmai with the Like-Hearted Project, and we are basically doing problem solving, interdisciplinary problem solving with peace building and through peace building and culture and conversation. Um, so with that, my closing is always the same. Take care of yourselves and each other. Peace.